It took a while for me to re-up my tea levels after being soyed nearly into submission this week, leading up to the Soylo, a Soy Wars Soyri release by Disney Lucasfilm. It's the latest character to be butt-fucked by Kathleen Kennedy. And I actually think the question is, should you see this movie, in my opinion? And I actually think, when I wanted to do this review, I realized that I had to have a unique take. It couldn't be from the place of being a super fan because there are already a lot of great reviews like that, like Papa Ethan's review, very good from a super fan standpoint. Me, I needed to come at it from a different perspective. And while I think about and mull over the Tommy Robinson situation, I may make a video on that later today. I'm still formulating my thoughts on that. I thought, why not do the Soylo review, even if it may have already been done? So if you like it, make sure that you remember to like the video, and I really would appreciate that. So I spent my $15 and tediously purchased my ticket at my local theater and only saw it that way, of course, because I want to support the company. And after watching it twice, I think there's actually two ways to review this. One is as a super fan, when you are concerned about the canon, history, things like that. And the other is kind of just a general moviegoer here on a long holiday weekend in the United States. It's common people would go see a movie, and so you see Star Wars. So from a business standpoint, the movie is doing very poorly in the box office. Way below original standards. Some people way back when were thinking it was going to do 200 to 300 million. It is now very likely that the movie doesn't even break 100 million this weekend, which is got to be a loss. It's got to put Disney in the red for this film, considering you had two directors and you had to do so many reshoots. I assume this will be a huge financial loss for them, which I think sends a really loud and clear statement that either don't make movies people don't ask for or make them well. I called over to my local theater a couple of times throughout the day, and every theater always had tons of tickets available. None of them, as I scrolled through online, were ever more than 2/3 full for even popular Friday night showings. That tells you a lot about the overall hype for the film. Now, I did talk to friends that saw it on release night who are mega Star Wars fans, and I remember getting having a really sad exchange of text with a friend of mine. He really excitedly texted me and said, "Dude, did you see Star Wars yet? 9 out of 10. Loved it." To which I replied, "Really? 3 out of 10. And then I asked him why he felt that way. I didn't try to shit on him because, to be honest, we all have things we're like super fans about where they can do no wrong. Whether it's like bands you like, movie franchises. I mean, like the Rocky movie series. I liked Balboa even. I like the Rambo series. A lot of people don't like the remakes. I do. There are bands that are guilty pleasures for me. Like back in the day, it was Blink-182. Stuff like that. So I'm going to give him a pass on liking the film because he's a super fan and maybe he wasn't viewing it through the same lens I was. When it gets to casting, though, I have to say, just as a moviegoer and a film fan, I thought it was really poor. I thought Alden Third Reich was awful as Han. He didn't try to play Han. I think the best remake or reboots are when a good character plays the old character as that person, right? If he had played Harrison Ford as Han Solo, I think it would have been more acceptable. He kind of played it in his own way, and it didn't work for me. Now, is that his fault? It's hard to say. I mean, he can't help that most of us saw the original, have seen Han for many years, and have this kind of thing in our head, and that's the trouble with reboots. Donald Glover, he was fine. He was fine. Nothing special. In fact, he was, even that said, he was probably one of the most meme-worthy characters of the movie. He did have some moments that were memorable, that were pretty hilarious, even though they implied at one point that he had sex with his robots, and he was just an ultra, he was not a good character in my opinion, but I thought Donald Glover played him well, and that was an example of a character playing like the Billy D version, like of Lando. I thought he did well. Emilia Clarke, totally forgettable, super boring. Like, you're British, we get it. Other than that, really, really, really mediocre. When you look at the supporting cast, outside of that, not much of it was really memorable, other than L3, which is basically an SJW droid, constantly screaming about droid rights. And I think, unfortunately, I have to view this movie through the lens that I have on right now, and I'm just like, is this like a statement about refugees, or is this a statement about whatever? Like, didn't like it. Character was forced, not funny, and when I get to my final score, this droid was responsible for, out of 10, a -2 points. 2 full points gone because of this character. Terrible. Lando crying over the droid was one of the most cringeworthy things I've seen. Like, why is there a droid, also, this is a plot hole, that stands up for droids' rights in a galaxy that was recently blown the fuck out by droids in a civil war? Again, these are the things that a super fan would pick up on, and I read a lot of comments about it, that if you are like Papa Ethan, you hate this. If you're a casual action film fan, you don't even know or care about it. Han himself, let's talk about Han himself. I thought he had zero chemistry between him and Kira. The film doesn't really do a good job at telling why I should care, why she's important to him. They do have a lot of callbacks, which I think normie old school Star Wars fans will appreciate, versus like the hyper, lore-driven fans that don't care about. They mention how Han Solo got his name. Who is asking that question? Nobody. But again, who is asking for a Han Solo movie? Nobody. Han was constantly getting cucked. He was really, really beta, in my opinion. Hated that aspect. He gets pushed around by every woman in the movie. He gets pushed around by the feminist droid. This was not, in my opinion, a young Han Solo. Didn't feel like him at all. But again, I was viewing it through the lens of somebody who has been ingrained in the way characters were. So I'm really, really, really hard to please when it comes to reboots. Here's a really normie reboot that I liked, believe it or not. I like Death Wish. Yeah, I know it's not like a legendary film or whatever, but I thought the reboot with Bruce Willis was actually pretty good. Like, that's the kind of stuff I want out of my reboots. You've got to pay homage to the original. You can't change too much of it. You can have your own spin to it, but don't veer too far off the rails, like the Ghostbusters reboot, for example. The music in the film was very good all the way through. They did recycle a lot of music, which depends kind of like what kind of fan you are. I didn't mind it. But I saw a lot of people criticizing it, and I understand why. It can appear lazy. The cool scenes, I thought, obviously the Kessel Run. This is a very interesting thing, especially for fans of the lore. A lot of people would say that, that scene, that sequence, 15, 20 minutes of the movie, kind of saved it from being a complete disaster. It was awesome, in my opinion, to see Han and Chewie come together, like their origin story. There's a really cool scene in the movie where Chewie like rips a dude's arms off and leaves like some bloody stumps. I thought that was very cool. I was okay with how Han, of course, met Chewie. They're basically set to battle. They end up teaming up together. I don't really want to give up too many spoilers, but they do have a shower scene together. Let's put it that way. Therm Scissors Punch. Scissors Punch was in the film. Of course, had no lines, but there were some cool aspects. But in my opinion, both trying to view through the lens of like a hardcore Star Wars fan, wasn't enough of them. And even as a general, if you view this through the lens of like just a general, popcorn film, which is honestly, as I'm getting near the end of this review, the classification I would put this film in, it was fine. It was really slow in the beginning, like watching paint dry for no reason at all. Side note, one thing that maybe I just saw, maybe let me know if you happen to pay full price at this to see this film and definitely didn't download it or anything like that. I'm only curious in your opinion if you paid to see the movie, obviously. I would never condone doing anything else, but what is it that all the female characters in this film were ultra badass and all the men were fucking lame? Lando, you know, sad. Han was a wimp. I get that most people that watch a film wouldn't see it that way, but that really annoyed me. Han, it's like they totally disrespected him as a character. They made him into like this, I don't know. I didn't care for it. Some overall takes. So I felt like you could definitely tell that the film had two different directors and had been spliced together. At times, it felt really, really disjointed. And as I mentioned earlier, so boring in the first half. And I think very rarely will I get up. By the way, enough with these 3-hour movies. I mean, 2.5 hours is too damn long. If you can't learn to leave some stuff on the cutting room floor, like I don't want to sit in a movie theater for 3 hours. It's just too damn long when you got the previews and all this stuff. The movie better be like Lord of the Rings style, keep you engaged the whole time. Otherwise, I don't want to be there all damn day. I thought there were a lot of scenes, including like the opening battle scene, that felt really awkward. And they were constantly trying to elicit this emotion, this connection. And I just felt nothing. I don't know how you felt out there. If you paid full price to see it at a movie theater, as that is the only way you can obviously see the movie. But what I thought, though, was the fatal flaw of this film is, so let's say they both started at 10, both aspects, right? Both, I think, the hardcore fan and the casual fan hate L3. Nobody likes. So, boom, 2 points off the top. Now you're down to an 8 out of 10, which means you're already down to a movie that most people could skip, okay? The fatal flaw of this movie is how it dealt with humor. Instead of being funny, it felt like it was trying to be funny. Does that make sense? Like, comedy in the Star Wars universe should be used as the literal definition of comedic relief. Like the kind of comedy that I think fits Star Wars is when something happens and you're like, like it's a look between Chewie and Han. It's like a funny, lucky moment where something just works out right. That is the type of humor I want to see in the Star Wars universe, and this is just my opinion. But it felt like the whole movie was just forcing jokes, forcing, especially with the L3 character. So, in the grand scheme of things, following the same track, I thought the failed humor cost the film 1 full point in both tracks. So now we're down to, in both eyes, 7 out of 10. Best. That means if the movie nails everything else, it's a 7 out of 10. Now, this is, of course, my opinion. Add to the fact that all the men were total pussies in the film, and all the women happen to be super mega alpha. That costed a half point to me, too. At least make it even. The integration, and I'm not going to spoil it. If you guys want to talk about it in the comment section down below, that's up to you. But there's a throwback to an old character at the very end of the movie that is really dumb. It makes no sense at all. This character just appears for no reason. I'm not going to knock any points off for that. But I just thought, But all of this said, I think in both aspects, an argument could be made. This is probably the best Disney Star Wars film. It's not the worst. It's not Last Jedi. And that's kind of sad. Like, if I'm trying to review a film and tell you if you should see it or not, in my opinion, for me to say like, well, it's not the worst. Like, think about, I view things through, in my opinion, when I think about seeing movies, like, do I want to pay, if I take my girl, that's $30 in tickets plus snacks. So it's $50 to go see a movie. Yes, you could go cheap. You could go to matinee. You could buy no snacks. Fine. Then you should have lower standards. But the way I see movies is with a bucket of popcorn, a friend, and something to drink. So I'm spending 40, 50 bucks. So I think about going to the movies. It has to be, in my opinion, an 8 out of 10. So in either track, I think this movie is very skippable. In my opinion, the best verbal score I can give, or vocabulary-wise, is it was aggressively mediocre. It was not terrible. I think if you're a hardcore Star Wars canon fan, you're going to hate it. If you are a Star Wars fan, like a normie Star Wars fan, which is, let's be honest, the majority of people, you're probably going to like the movie just fine. And like I said earlier, I spoke with people, friends of mine, that were genuinely in love with the movie, that gave it a 9 out of 10. To me, no way. So as a Star Wars hardcore fan, I think you can decide to get it in other ways that I would never personally condone, or wait to rent it. I think it's totally fine to wait to rent. There are other films right now in the theater that, if you haven't seen, Deadpool is a great way to go if you want to get out of the heat this weekend, see a movie. I honestly think next weekend we're going to have Upgrade, which kind of looks like a fun, I don't know, I haven't looked at any of the early reviews or anything of that, but that looks like it's going to be a fun movie. I think if you like action, action films, like if you're a normie film fan, Deadpool or Upgrade both look really fun. So as a hardcore Star Wars fan, I would give this probably a 5 out of 10 or 5.5 out of 10. And that's actually right where the Rotten Tomatoes scores are. I think it was like 54, 55%. So my take on it from that lens, and I honestly think most hardcore fans are the ones really leaving their reviews, right? Normies they don't care. Normies think the Rotten Tomatoes score is the real score, right? For like a popcorn film, I got nothing going on this weekend. Maybe I want to bring a girl, try to finger bang her a little bit in the movie. I don't know. Or if you're a girl, maybe you want to, do the old popcorn bucket trick. This movie's probably a 6.5 or even a 7 out of 10. There's nothing wrong with it as a film for a normie. If you got nothing going on, I would personally like to see you spend your money elsewhere to send a message to Star Wars to stop butt fucking everybody, especially when we got like Obi-Wan and Boba Fett movies coming up where, if they go down this road and just completely degrade all of these beloved characters and milk them for cash, people are really going to push back. So maybe if people avoid seeing the film in the theater, it will send a loud message, because I can be certain that if Lucasfilm loses a bunch of money on this film, heads will roll, in my opinion. I don't like how Roundhead Rian Johnson attacked the fans, and there has to be a penalty for that. We can't just keep going to see the movie anyway. We can't just bitch about it and then go see it anyway. This is coming from, I'm getting nerding out a little bit as a fan. It was not easy. There are critics like Papa Ethan went and saw it, and that's his right. Me, you can't hate something this much and then give him your money. That's where him and I disagree. I just can't. Obviously, I paid, of course, to see it. But it is my recommendation that if you're not happy with the direction of the Star Wars cinematography, the cinematic universe is going, that you don't give them your money. There are plenty of better options directed by people that don't hate you, right? If you're just a normie, whatever, and you just happen to be tuning in, fine. And there's nothing wrong if you like the film. I think, like I said, for like a normie fan, a 7 out of 10 is a reasonable score. I would have definitely a strong argument with somebody who tried to tell me it was an 8 or a 9 out of 10, even as a movie, because it's not really funny. It's disjointed. There are cinematic flaws with this film that just hold it back. But overall, that's my take on Solo, a Star Wars story. I want to see what your thoughts are below. What kind of numbers do you think this movie would have to get before heads would roll? Would it make a difference? I'm curious to hear. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again real soon.